Hi, I'm movie man Eric Houston, and I recently had the distinct pleasure of sitting down to interview Mary Jo Pehl. Mary Jo is an actor, writer, and comedian who's probably best known for Mystery Science Theater 3000, that show about the guy and his two robot buddies making fun of bad movies that was made right here in Minnesota. Mary Jo and I talked about her career in comedy and on Mystery Science Theater, and about growing up in one of the cities that I work for, Circle Pines. Well, I thought we'd start. Could you tell me what it was like growing up in Circle Pines?
Well, when I grew up in Circle Pines, horse and buggy were still in vogue. No, it was a small town back then. It wasn't as connected by transportation. God, it sounds so old. It wasn't connected the way it is now. Like I see it now, and it's very much a suburb. Like people are living there and commuting to the Twin Cities proper.
Hmm.
But when I was there, it was much more of a small town. I think the population on the sign for years was 3,800 or so, and we lived in kind of a wooded area. There were still big patches of woods and rural areas, and it really sort of segued into farmland. It was really on the border of a lot of farmland.
So, did you feel like you had sort of a rural upbringing then?
No, I think it's more small. If you'd had to
Yeah.
characterize it, it's much more small town. I mean, it wasn't until I know somebody will correct me on this, but we never even had a McDonald's. I mean, it was like we never had a McDonald's until well, long after I moved away. So it wasn't a thing.
Yeah. But your father, he was the mayor of Circle Pines?
Yes, he was. I was just a baby. I mean, I think it was from 1960 to 1962. He was Circle Pine's youngest mayor.
Impressive.
Yeah, I know, right?
Was it odd having your father be the mayor?
Well, I don't know because I was so little,
Okay.
but I have asked him about it. I'm really because I'm really curious about that time in his life. By that time he would have had three little kids, and then two brothers came after me. Three little kids. I think he was 25 or 26.
Oh, wow.
And so that's what I want to know. And I want to ask my mom about it. She died several years ago,
Hmm.
but I can't imagine. He's working a full-time job. He's got three little kids. He's 26 and he's a mayor. I want to know how they made it all work.
Sure. Have you talked to him about like why did he want to be mayor?
My dad is very, what is the word I'm looking for? He really seeks to make things better. Like he can see systems that might need improving or aspects of people's lives that could be improved. And I've asked him what's the favorite thing that he accomplished during his tenure as mayor, and he says bulk pickup. Like the city didn't have bulk pickup before, and I think that's so great. That's my dad. Like he would figure out, oh, people need bulk pickup. It's not like the huge Nobel Peace Prize winning things, but people do need bulk pickup.
That's his legacy.
Totally. Thank you. Can I steal that word now?
Please, please. And so I assume you went to school in Circle Pines.
Yes, Centennial. Yes.
So what sort of things did you and your friends like to do? Where did you go?
Well, I was pretty. I don't think my high school friends would call me this, but I felt very shy and reserved in high school. So honestly, Eric, all I remember is I was on the swim team, so I would go to swim practice, but then I would come home and I would watch like Match Game or the Mike Douglas show. I was huge into TV, because I just was kind of shy that way. Um, I wasn't a person who went to all the football games. I was a theater nerd, and my group were theater nerds. So I had that camaraderie.
Were you doing plays?
Yes. Yeah.
What did you do?
I was I was in Lil Abner. I played one of the scientists.
Right.
I was up for the lead in The Skin of Our Teeth, and it did not go to me, and I am bitter to this day. Those are the only two I can remember. I think I was in a couple of one acts, but I can't remember them. But those are two that I remember.
That Little Abner play is fascinating.
How so?
Like, I'm fascinated by, like, Little Abner to me is the epitome of a thing that was at one time the biggest, most famous thing in the world, and that no one remembers anymore. You know, like, it was a huge comic strip, and then they did that play, which they adapted into a movie with Buster Keaton in a weird small role.
Right.
And it's like where we get Sadie Hawkins Day from, and there was a theme park in, I think, like Oklahoma that was all Little Abner themed.
I did not know that.
Yeah, it was called Dog Patch USA.
Oh, excellent.
And that was in operation until like the 80s or 90s. And so it's this just weird cultural, especially old comic strips, I feel like had a day in the sun where they were the unifying thing in culture, and now it's
so interesting. No, I'm sorry I'm still stuck on that the theme park no longer exists, because I would go there in a heartbeat. And it's also this weird thing of at the time it was one of those plays that all high schools were doing, because it had a large cast. It had, you could get everybody in it. I can't remember the music really, but it must have been navigable for high schools.
Yeah, I mean, I think the music's pretty forgettable, but like it's, and it also has that hook. Like, now you see a lot of high schools do the Disney musicals like Beauty and the Beast or something like that. But at that time, the Lil Abner name had the cachet.
Yes. Oh, that's hilarious, Eric. Yeah. And it makes me think like, I think not to get us too far off track, but I think it seems like high school musical productions have gotten so sophisticated. Like people are doing Urinetown, they're doing Les Mis, like things that I think are the scale of them is massive, and they're pretty sophisticated. And if I were a high school theater director, I don't know how you wrangle that many cats for a big musical like that.
Sure.
With so many moving parts.
Right, and the production design has gotten so elaborate.
Yeah.
There was a teacher in my high school that lobbied every year. He wanted to figure out a way to get the rights to the Muppet movie and do the Muppet movie as a high school play with teachers as the cameos. So instead of like Edgar Bergen, it would be the principal or...
So he was going to adapt it for the stage.
Right.
Right on, but it never came to fruition.
No, because every year, because there wasn't a mechanism to call up Henson or whatever and say,
how are we going to do this? Oh my gosh!
Right, and I thought that he meant that the kids would it would be like Avenue Q or something, and there'd be a kid walking around with Kermit. He wanted a kid to be Kermit.
So not operating a puppet from behind a desk, but full costumed.
In my head it's face paint, but sure.
Okay.
Yeah.
But still a lot of necessary adaptations.
Right.
Which is, I want to get into his head. I want to talk to him.
Oh, I would give any amount of money to see this thing actually staged. It would be.
He was kind of onto something with the teachers making cameos. However, your audience is going to be very narrow because there's going to be inside jokes, and not everybody's going to get that, But I like his vision. I like his passion.
Now, so you talked getting back to Circle Pines. You talked about this a little bit already, but yeah, how do you see the town having changed?
I don't get back there much, but it's obviously it's grown a lot. There's a McDonald's, and um, the Dairy Queen has moved from its iconic hut
Mhm.
uh, location on Lake Drive to the
Mhm.
corner of Lexington and Lake Drive, and it's a more modern building. It is very weird when you get to a point in your life where you go back to your hometown, and not only is it changed, it's virtually unrecognizable.
Mhm.
And you might, like, I still get my taxes done out there with my father's old income accounting firm, and you still expect to see people and you don't know
Mhm.
anybody. And so I don't think I'm answering your question, Eric, but I
No,
think
you
it's
are.
like every small town, like
Yeah.
in life, it just continues to transform. It just keeps, the world keeps turning.
Yeah. I sympathize very. I'm from Indiana originally, and anytime, yeah, I haven't lived there now in coming on 20 years, and I think back on it, and all the places I would go to are gone now. So I get that very much.
And I think when you're apart from it,
Hmm.
like I lived in Austin, Texas for 10 years. And
Hmm.
when I came back to Minneapolis, I don't think I actively thought that the world had stood still or Minneapolis had
Right.
stood still, but still I was I was kind of nostalgic and amazed that so many things had changed. I would go somewhere and not recognize everyone because I used to
Hmm.
be able to walk anywhere when I lived in Minneapolis proper, and you'd always run into people.
Hmm.
And it turns out they did not hold Minneapolis for my return.
What were they thinking?
I know, what are you going to do?
There you go. Now, am I right in thinking? So you did theater in high school. Am I right too in thinking that you started writing in high school?
Yeah, I think I was on. I think I contributed some columns to the school newspaper. Yeah.
How did you get interested in writing and in comedy?
Well, I think the writing came first because I was pretty introverted, and I just loved the feel of a pen and paper and being able to transcribe all my very important private thoughts. And I read the book Harriet the Spy, and she keeps a notebook, so that really influenced me. And once I got hold of a pen and a notebook and started writing everything down, because as an introverted child, you just experiment with expression. And then comedy, just it was a whole different thing, like at least 15 years later when I couldn't hold down a real job. And then a friend, I was at a job, KTEL International, which actually was a place. Remember they made all those compilation albums? And a friend of mine, this was during the comedy boom in Minneapolis of the 1980s. A friend of mine was doing open stages. We worked together at KTEL, and he said, "Come and do an open stage with me." And I was mortified and terrified, but I was like, I didn't even know what it was, but I was like, okay. Um, and then it just kind of got legs, much to my surprise.
What was your what when you settled on an act? What was your act like?
Well, at that time, it was very little fantastical, kind of surreal. Like I made up a scenario about, excuse me, being married and my husband. You know what, Eric? I can't even remember. I should have emailed my friend to ask him if he could remember my act, but it was very fantastical. It wasn't based in real life at all, and it was pretty shoehorned, like non-narrative. I would think of different bits
Hmm.
and just try and string them together, but it wasn't cohesive. It was just different bits all in one fell swoop.
From the way you're describing it, was it would you call it kind of character comedy? Was it something like what Phyllis Diller was doing, where it was, this is what my home life is like with this weird husband and that kind of thing?
I think it was unintentionally character based because I was so terrified. I got a very
Mhm.
flat affect, like Stephen Wright,
Mm.
because I just wanted to get up and do my time and get off the stage. And I was panicked if people laughed, and I was panicked if they didn't laugh. So I just kind of did this monotone trying to get through my act. And I feel like I could answer that better if I could remember more specifics
Mhm.
about my act. But I think one of my jokes was, and see, if I try and tell you, you're going to think, what was she doing stand-up comedy? But one thing that people loved was I made up this bit about being locked in my car, and it was a convertible. And so I took on this identity of being kind of dim-witted or not being able
Mhm.
to figure stuff out.
Mhm. I think that sounds very funny.
Well, thank you.
When did you first become aware then of Mystery Science Theater?
I had done comedy with a lot of the people who started the show. And at the time, I didn't even have a television. I was so broke. I did not have a television. So it felt very apocryphal to me. I knew some of my friends were working on it. I knew Joel Hodgson, but it seemed very abstract because I didn't have a television. And I honestly didn't have a sense of what the hell it was until I got asked to audition for it.
Audition as a writer.
Correct.
So did you have to do, it's such a specific show to write for. Did you do like a packet? How do you audition to write for Mystery Science Theater?
They gave me a clip of something, and I can't remember what it was. They gave me a clip on a VHS, maybe 10 minutes, and they must have, can this be so that I was that dumb? They must have, one of my friends must have roughly described the concept to me, because I don't remember doing any research, like going to somebody who had a TV and
Mhm.
watching it. Oh my God. So they gave me that, and then they asked me to write a really short script to it. And then I remember they had a questionnaire, which was kind of when I think of it now, kind of a screener, like who were my musical tastes, who did I think was funny, just sort of maybe passing for an actual application, you
Mhm.
know.
So when you did finally see the show, what did you think of it?
If memory serves, the first time I saw the show was probably my first day in the writing room when it finally clicked.
Mhm.
And honestly, Eric, I thought, oh, I am home. Who knew this kind of job existed? Because I had been weaned on, when I was a kid, when I was a teenager, I was a babysitter. Like I babysat practically every night of the week, people in the neighborhood. And at that time, you had 4 channels and you had late night movies. And I loved all those stupid movies like Swamp Thing, Creature from the Black Lagoon. I loved them.
Mhm.
And the first movie I wrote as a writer was one of those bad black and white movies. And I was like, oh, oh, okay, this, it just aligned for me. Does that make
Mhm.
sense? Am I making sense?
Absolutely, absolutely. And well, you just mentioned earlier being huge into television and watching like Match Game and stuff. So so it seems like swamp-based monster movies
Oh, yeah, of
are
course.
are a part of it.
What? Of
Like,
course.
what were the other, like, what were the big TV influences for you? Like, what were the things that really stuck to you?
Oh, Laugh-In.
Okay.
But I had to watch it on the sly because my parents didn't want me watching it. The Mary Tyler Moore Show,
Hmm.
was huge. The Carol Burnett Show.
Hmm.
Um, Coming home from school and watching Match Game, as I said, and a lot of talk shows like that would have been when Mike Douglas was on, and whoever else. I'm Dick Cavett. All those shows, and all those late night movies, and later in high school, it was the Welcome Back, Kotter, all those Mork and Mindy. I was never a Mork and Mindy fan. I know we're going to get hate mail, but
Uh, well, on behalf of Mork and Mindy, I think I can forgive you.
okay.
I think that's going to be all right.
No, a lot of things I just watched in as a way of like, I'm not sure I knew or thought I knew what was funny. It was more of an archaeological observation,
Sure.
Like, oh, that's how they're doing it. Okay, they want us to believe this. So I was fairly literal and analytical about it.
So you were talking about your first episode writing on the show. Am I right in thinking that was Teenagers from Outer Space?
Yes, sir.
And you, in the old episode guide, you tell a great story about your first riff on the show.
Mm-hmm.
Would you like to share?
Eric, I was going to make you say it. I could see. Well, yes, and I'm going to make you beg for it.
Please.
Once I got the hang of it, my pal Bridget Nelson, with whom I currently do Rifftrax with, she was a writer on Mystery Science Theater too. And before I started my first day, she kind of coached me through it. I just love her so much. And she kind of coached me through it, and she just said, just say what comes into your mind. We're all in front of a big TV. Use your real life. Don't try too hard. But I was super nervous, and I wanted to impress everyone.
Mm-hmm.
And there's this giant spaceship. It's so great. I love those awful, wonderful movies. Giant spaceship that's shaped like a Kentucky Derby hat or a sun hat. And I said, my joke was, here comes Audrey Hepburn's hat from, and I can't remember the movie, coming in for a landing. So it's not a sleek joke. It's kind of belabored, but it was kind of the first thing I threw at the screen.
Well, it's spot on too. I mean, I believe it's that you say it's Audrey Hepburn's hat from Breakfast at Tiffany's.
Yeah. Okay, thank you.
And it's spot on. I mean, it looks just like that big black hat.
It does. Thank you,
Absolutely.
sir.
You're welcome. I'm exposing myself as an enormous dork, but
no, not at all.
there you are.
Absolutely.
Did you meet Bridget through Mystery Science Theater then, or were you already friends?
We were already friends through doing stand-up comedy together, like Mike and Bridget and Frank and Joel and Trace. We all were on the stand-up comedy circuit. I didn't know Kevin until I started the show. He was not on the stand-up circuit.
Okay. But you've obviously been friends with Bridget in particular for a very long time now. What's your relationship like?
We are really different in a lot of ways, and we are super tight. And excuse me, it's so interesting because I'm kind of not in an age where I say best friends anymore, but she kind of knows everything, and I know everything about her, and we can, at a drop of a hat, just start blabbing about stuff. Often our views don't align, but it's really interesting how we can find common ground coming from each of our perspectives. And the thing I find so funny about Bridget and me is we can never remember each other's birthdays. And I've known her for, well, I guess like 30 years. We've been through a lot of stuff together, like, drama in my life, drama and pain in her life that we've shared, and yet we can never remember each other's birthdays. I don't know if that's adequately describing the relationship, but
I'm not sure that anything could describe it better.
okay. Well done, Eric.
It sounds like the perfect encapsulation of a relationship to me,
Right.
honestly.
Yeah.
So you're a big fan of those sorts of movies, of Teenagers from Outer Space and Creature from the Black Lagoon and stuff like that. Did working on Mystery Science Theater and having to mainline so many of them and so many subpar ones, did that hamper that love for you? Like, can you still watch movies like that, or is it tortured now?
No, I can, but I think it's with a bit less relish, because it feels like I'm going into it more analytically,
Mhm.
or maybe there is a little bit of burnout there. I mean, people should have such problems, but maybe a little bit less relish. But I can still really appreciate. I'm really a fan. I'm a fan of those movies, but I'm also a fan of. Have you ever seen Ed Wood, the movie Ed Wood?
Yeah.
I feel like the movie Ed Wood was made for the writers of Mystery Science Theater 3000 because it's so heartfelt. And that is a piece of these bad movies that I really adore. Like seeing these people put their passions out there. It's not easy to make a movie, not even a crappy movie. It's really hard. There's a lot of moving parts, no matter how bad it is. So I have an affection. I will always have an affection in that regard.
It's no one sets out to make a bad movie. I mean, that's something people have said
Right.
1,000 times.
Right.
And like that's the thing. And yeah, Ed Wood very much captures that, the camaraderie around it and the passion around it. And that's a thing that I think about a lot when I'm watching those movies, or even a movie like Manos that I think a lot of people who know it from Mystery Science Theater would call maybe the worst movie ever made. But I can't divorce that movie from the story of these people in Texas, this manure salesman in Texas just trying to make a movie. This, you talked about theater in high school. Just let's put on a show. Let's put on a show and film it.
Totally. And there's a piece of Manos that feels rather unexamined with the dark undercurrents and the weird aspects. Like if you pull on those threads, it's like,
Mhm.
oh, there's a child involved. But I do think that fertilizer salesman was like, I got some 8mm film. I don't know how I'm going to sync the sound, but let's do it. And people showed up for it. And I think that's really great in a weird way.
Absolutely. Oh, absolutely. And yeah, that's true too. Is I don't know that I ever want to get into his psyche.
Right.
Like
Right.
I'm not sure that I ever want to hear the backstory on. Yeah. Like let's talk a little bit about the harem aspect of it. I don't think so. I'm good.
And the whole like I guess I have to go back and watch the credits, but I'm really curious
Mhm.
about who and how Torgo was envisioned. Like who envisioned Torgo, who
Right.
thought, and that poor actor
Mhm.
bringing it to life, and now he's infamous in
Mhm.
maybe not a great way, but
Well, Torgo's adorable. Torgo's the encapsulation of that
what?
whole thing. Well, because like he's supposed to be a satyr, and like what they were able to pull off on their budget and their idea is to just stuff
Watermelon.
a pillow or whatever into his pants to make it seem like he had thick thighs and have him hobble around like he's on hoofs. It's
Right.
like you guys are trying. You're
Yeah.
trying your hardest.
But you said did you say he specifically was adorable or the
Well, the
actor?
idea, I guess, of
Okay,
Torgo is
okay, thank
adorable.
you. No, no, I think you bring up a good point.
Mhm.
Like this guy is in this costume. It's impossible. It's really hard to make
Mhm.
a movie,
Mhm.
especially if you are just working piecemeal, and that's what actors do. They
Mhm.
don't know what the final outcome is going to be.
Mhm.
So there's this guy hobbling around. He tries to deliver for
Mhm.
real.
Right. He's doing his best. The makeup people are doing their best, and they're doing their best on the thinner than a shoestring budget that they have. And I mean, and it's something that's different too from movies made by like The Asylum or Sharknado or something like that, where they're trying to be they're either trying to be tongue in cheek or they're trying to take advantage of people.
Yeah.
And something like Torgo or Teenagers from Outer Space or any of those, there's just a sincerity to them.
There's a real
And
earnestness,
mhm.
and I agree. Like with Sharknado, although I know Mike, Kevin, and Bill on Rifftrax have
Mhm.
riffed them and very successfully. I think
Sure.
there is an aspect of winking to the audience.
Yeah. And really everything that we're talking about here, that's one of the things I love the most about Mystery Science Theater is this, like, yes, they're quote unquote bad movies, and there's this conceit that they're trying to drive the host mad with the bad movies, but the relationship between, you know, the writer, you guys the writers, and through you the characters with the movie seems more of a camaraderie than it does antagonistic. You know, like, it's we're in this together with the movie and we're working with the movie to build something out of it, as opposed to trying to fight it off or detesting it or something like
Yeah, I
that.
think that's a really, really well said and a really good observation. I think we were always working with the movie, you know, and we had the opportunity to point out weird stuff or distasteful mores that might have been portrayed. But I think there was a lot of affection for the movies and the filmmakers. We were all film lovers, huge film lovers. So I think there was a lot of affection there.
There are a number of references to Circle Pines in the show.
Mm-hmm.
Is that all you?
That's all me, baby. I was trying to use it as Circle Pines is a great town name, if I do say so. You know, I think, and also it was the idea of trying to. I think at one point there's this huge glamorous city, and we compare it to Circle Pines. So it sort of acts as this baseline, this small Midwestern town baseline for either a comparison with Paris or you know, on the other end of the spectrum, you know, the desert in a Coleman Francis movie.
Yeah, it's more specific than saying like every town USA.
Yes, thank you. Well said. Yeah. Yes.
So how did writing the show work? You sort of alluded to it a little bit already, but you know, what was the actual, you know, it's Tuesday afternoon, it's time to write. How does that work?
We would show up and we had this giant writing room with really comfortable couches and chairs and a big screen TV. And we had one of those old Apple Macintoshes, like the box ones like this. And we would take turns transcribing everyone's joke. And Mike Nelson would be in charge of running the remote usually. And so we'd run the movie for a few seconds, and then people would just start gassing off jokes with whatever was on the screen or what was being said. And then somebody would transcribe as quickly as they could. And we'd do that the first day of the writing cycle. Then the next day we'd write the host segments. Then the third day of the writing cycle, we'd go through the entire movie again, just to load it up with as many jokes as possible.
Were there ever any movies that you had seen before?
That's a really good question. I don't think so.
Right.
Well, we did do that Richard Carlson movie. It wasn't Creature of the Black Lagoon, was it? We couldn't have gotten that movie.
At one point you did Revenge of the Creature, the second one.
Yes. So no, that's what I was trying to think of. So no, I'd seen Creature of the Black Lagoon, but not that one. So no, the short answer. Sorry.
Right. So, well, yeah, but I mean, so then you're not showing up into the writer's room with stuff preloaded, is correct. I suppose what you're getting at.
Right.
So it's all just off the top of your heads.
Yes.
That's amazing. What was the culture like of the staff and the team when you started working there?
It was, I mean, we all knew each other. From stand-up comedy. It was really interesting. I'm hesitating because it's hard to encapsulate. We all had so many different perspectives, but we also had a real a shared sensibility of humor. And it was a really great immersive experience for me because I learned how to be a better writer, because you really had to defend your joke or pitch a joke or talk about the space in the movie where you were putting the joke and be analytical about it. It spoiled me for life because every single day I would laugh my head off I mean, some of the funniest people in the world. Um, it's not to say that it was, puppies and unicorns all the time. I mean, we're all creative types and we all had points of view. Um, and we had this great staff. Like I think the people who really made it, really like buttoned it all up, were people like Bees McKeever and Patrick Bransig and Jeff Maynard, because they made these amazing props. We had production assistants and production staff who could turn on a dime and be so smart and generous about switching things up. So it was pretty amazing. It spoiled me for life, I feel like.
I can only imagine, like, it seems like it would have been just, yeah, a wonderful place to work and people to work with.
I'll never experience anything like that again.
Yeah, wow. And you were there for a lot of the big turning points of the show. So, I mean, the first probably, because you started in season 4, I think. And then the next year, Joel left and Mike became the host. What was that like at the time?
Well, I still felt like I was pretty new to the staff, and I was really trying to keep my head down and just do the work. So I wasn't alert to bigger things happening among the partners and how that was shaking out. I still felt really new in getting my legs under me. I know that there was a lot of furor on the internet, which was just becoming into its ascendancy. So people were all over the outrage and really invested in Joel and the show, which is great because that's how we built our fan base. Where would we be without them? But so I remember that piece of it, but I don't really recall much else. I think, Eric, for most of my time there, I was just trying not to be fired. And there was never any threat of me being fired, really. But before I came to Mystery Science Theater, I had lost like 6, 7, 8 jobs in a row, like in the regular working world. And I love this job so much. So I was like, I'm just gonna keep my head down.
Right. Just as long as it's not another K-Tel, you're gonna.
Yeah, right. Which I was laid off from. So
Didn't sell enough records.
guess not. It was all up to me.
Well, we talked a good bit about the amount of effort it goes into making a movie, and you guys made a movie. How was that different from how did that come about, and how was that different from making the show?
It was really different because we had Hollywood handlers. They had to review the scripts. They nitpicked all the lines. So I feel like it really lost a lot of our homemade, quirky flair. And we had a big budget. And the thing I always loved about the TV show was this idea of it being so by the skin of our teeth and homemade, It was not a really enjoyable experience. It was very laborious because everything had to be processed through, I forget who produced, I forget what studio headed it up, but they had their team and everything had to be processed through them. And when it's not spontaneous, like the way we wrote the TV show on an 8-day cycle, so we were just like, when it's so labored, I think some of the joy got poked out of it.
So was that, I take it that was a difficult time to be working?
Yeah, and once we started shooting, I wasn't on the set because it was shot at Paisley Park, so we were still like Paul and I and I think everyone else was at the studio, but Paul and I were still like working on the book and screening movies and keeping that the TV show, the keeping those aspects going for the when we'd start shooting the TV show again.
And not long after you finished the movie, then the show moved to the Sci-Fi channel. You'd been on Comedy Central. You know, how was it pretty much the same kind of thing, or did it feel different to move to a different network?
It was a little different because they wanted all the movies to have some sci-fi association. So when you take out, when you take out a lot of movies from your pool because they don't have a sci-fi connection, that makes it a little bit harder. They also wanted a story arc throughout the season. So from show to show to show, some sort of connecting thread. And up until then, each host segment, each entire episode had been discrete, independent. So that was a little bit, working a different way. I think we also had to start sending them our scripts, and which we hadn't done with Comedy Central. And there were a couple of jokes that they nixed along the way. Not very many, but still, when you're used to a whole different process, like having free reign because it's this puppet show from the Midwest, who cares? So that process was different.
Why were they nixing jokes for? Just content, or?
The only specific one I can remember is we used the word putz. We called somebody a putz, and it was brought to our attention that that was a derogatory term, which of course we knew. I mean, I think there was a lot of attitude about us being stupid Midwesterners, but since the word was generally in play in the culture anyway, but whoever, standards and practices wouldn't let us say it.
My first car in high school had been bought from the Putz auto dealership.
Did he know that standards and practices wouldn't let him have that last name?
I guess not. I mean, he certainly didn't think they'd mind him putting his name on the back of every car that was sold.
Oh, I want to own a car that says Putz.
Oh yeah, right on the trunk there.
Excellent.
Absolutely. Now, so during the Sci-Fi Channel years, you took a much bigger part on screen on the show with Pearl Forrester, but it seemed like when she debuted a year or two earlier, it didn't really seem like there were plans for her to be a big part of the show.
Oh no, never, no. And when Trace decided to leave, we were trying to figure out how to continue the idea of an evil nemesis generating or continue to bear down on the premise of the experiment. So that's and honestly, I didn't pitch it at all. Somebody suggested it, and I was like, okay, because we did everything within. We rarely had outside actors except for the movie. We dragooned everybody. There's a couple of host segments where, like, my dad's in one, and we just got whoever we could. We got bees, we got the production staff. So you just felt like when it was brought up that Pearl would continue to enforce the experiment, you just kind of go along because it's kind of like a barn raising, like, okay, I guess I'll do that.
What episode's your dad in?
I can't remember, but there's it's like a pancake feed. So I think a niece and a nephew maybe are in it too. My dad, maybe his sister, I can't remember, but it's a big banquet table for a pancake feed.
Mm-hmm. There's like 20 or 30 people at that.
Yeah, it's huge.
Yeah. So how did the character evolve then? Once you started doing the show more often, like what was it like to start performing that often, and then how did you evolve the character?
Well, it was really scary because I panic easily, and I can have something memorized to death, but then when the shooting starts or I have to be on stage, I get really rattled. So it was really scary to learn how to walk and say things at the same time. I didn't want to let my fellow performers down. I didn't want to be a pain in the ass by forgetting stuff. So there was a lot of stress with it, but it was of my own doing. I mean, it was such a laid back show. Like, you know, we're all in it together. But I remember feeling that. I think the hardest part was the strong reaction that fans had. They didn't want Trace to leave, understandably so. Again, with the I don't know, what were they called, chat rooms at the time, and fan forums, very hostile, and very hostile about my personal appearance, and that a female should not take the role, and that was a really hard piece of it, you know, because it's right in your face, and before before that time, we didn't have the internet to have all that stuff in your face.
Right. I can only imagine. I was watching the show, but I wasn't on the internet in that way. And I'm
Yeah,
just,
right.
I'm just very sorry to hear that.
Well, thank you. That's really sweet. I'm just recalling it, and then I got to a point. It was kind of a great lesson, because I got to a point where it was like, whoa, I have like this really great job, and I'm going to let other people kind of take it away from me psychically or emotionally. You know, I just need to do the best job I can. I can't control that. So it was a learning experience, Eric.
There must have been some positive experiences with fans, though, along the way.
Totally. Above and beyond, like the bulk of it, the whole of it. The fans are so great. And when I was doing Cinematic Titanic, and we were touring, a lot of them, most of those people were Mystery Science Theater fans. And we would do a meet and greet line, and it was overwhelming. The sweetness, the love, really being able to put faces with people who have kept the show alive, and being able to meet them. So absolutely.
Great. So before we move on from Mystery Science Theater, are there any movies that you wish that you could have done on the show?
The one I can recall is Moment by Moment with John Travolta and Lily Tomlin. It was in our box of screeners, and all of us were so excited we might be able to get the rights to it. And we worked and worked and worked to get the rights to it, and it never came to fruition.
Rats. I don't know that one. I can't say I've ever heard of that.
I can't remember it exactly. I can picture the the VHS cover, but I think it's a younger man, older woman, romance, ill-fated.
Sure. Huh, all right.
Yeah. That's the one I remember.
There you go. Now, since Mystery Science Theater, you've done a lot. You wrote 2 books. What was that experience like?
Well, we don't talk about the first one because it's an awful experience.
I beg your pardon.
No, and I deny its existence. That's a whole separate story. But
so since Mystery Science Theater, you've written 1 book.
Eric, you're the best.
Like, so with the good book.
Yes.
Was that enjoy? Like, I mean, it's an accomplishment to have written a book. I mean, how did it feel to add that to your accomplishments?
It felt great, because I'm pretty Midwestern, where everything's like shameful, but I was really so much less ashamed of this book than anything. And I had an editor who worked with me, a friend of mine, at Random House. So it felt very satisfying, and I thought it was not bad. So
there you go. Well, I think not something that you're not ashamed of is the highest praise
Indeed.
in the Midwest.
Indeed.
I'm not ashamed of that.
I'm not entirely ashamed.
Fair enough. And I imagine you're also not entirely ashamed to have been a crossword puzzle clue.
No, I was a crossword puzzle crew, one across April 2000, I can't remember what year, 2007, in the TV Guide magazine crossword puzzle,
Nice.
which I delight in that so much. That makes me laugh so much. So
I can only dream. I can only aspire. One of the projects you worked on was Renfest. Can you tell me a little bit about that?
Yeah, that was in the making for Gal. I think even before Mystery Science Theater ended, with the videographer Jeff Stonehouse, who worked on Mystery Science Theater, dear friend, and he and I and any iteration of other creatives kept trying to get this, and Trace among them, kept trying to get a show about Renfest off the ground, and our lives would happen and we'd come back to it year after year. And then we shot a trailer in 2015, really hoping to sell it to Netflix or Amazon or whomever, any millions of streaming opportunities. And it never got off the ground. So, but I'm really proud of the trailer. Have you seen it?
Yeah.
It's beautifully shot.
Mm-hmm.
You know.
Well, I think it's a terrific idea.
I do too. And it's at the actual Minnesota Renfest. So it was shot while the Renfest was going on, and just lovely. And I feel like it had a lot of potential, but it never got legs. But who knows?
Well, you got to do something with it at least.
Yeah, totally.
Were you a big Renfest person?
No, I'd been there maybe twice in my whole life. But that's kind of the idea of it.
Yeah.
Like this clueless person who doesn't understand that world coming in to try and get them into shape and make it historically accurate.
Right. Yeah, it's what people should go see the trailer if they haven't already. Absolutely. Now, so you talked about doing Cinematic Titanic, and you're also a big part of Rifftrax.
Mm-hmm.
I think you might be the only person who was part of both of them.
Yeah. Yep.
What is that? But I mean, because you're still doing Rifftrax.
Right, with Bridget, yes.
Yeah. What has that been like for you?
Totally fun, totally great. It's totally my wheelhouse. I think Bridget is so funny, and she's a great collaborator, and we have a really good working rhythm. And again, Eric, I get to watch movies and make fun of them. What's not to like?
Mm-hmm. Absolutely.
And there's a lot of really positive fan response, so that's always rewarding.
Are you surprised to have been able to do something like Rifftrax to sort of keep that art form, or to do what you've been, to keep being able to do that, to watch the movies and comment on them like that?
I am surprised because when did I start with MST? Like 1993. And so the fact that it's kept generating, I'm so lucky, and now my skill set is about this big. But I'll take it,
Mm-hmm. Yeah, still get to do it.
Yeah,
absolutely. So a couple of years ago, Mystery Science Theater came back, and you did end up being a part of that. Pearl came back and did some things. What was that like for you? How is that different from what it was, and what did it feel like to be back in Pearl's shoes again?
It was a lot of fun, mostly because I'm back with working with Kevin and Bill as Bobo and Brain Guy. So when you're with your old buddies and your old groove, it's really fun, especially since we were in this enormous sound stage. Again, the difference in budgets was so different, and so it makes me even more nervous because there's more people I could possibly let down or disappoint. But we fell into it right away, and it was fun. I hate to keep repeating it, but people should like have such problems,
Right.
know.
Yeah, I mean, there's a lot worse things that you can say about your career and I'll say it again, your legacy than that it was fun.
Right. And it was surprising. It did have a different feel to it because I wasn't involved in the writing of it and the new cast and everything. So you're coming on more like a day player instead of having been involved in all the nuts and bolts from the word go. But Joel was fulfilling his dream of wanting to continue it, and that is absolutely fine. And a couple of days in the studio with people I adore.
Why not?
Why not?
So, Mary Jo, last but not least, what advice do you have for anybody, but especially for young women who are interested in a career in comedy or writing or television?
Oh, do it. I think it's such an exciting time because you're not beholden to someone else being gatekeepers for what you do. You can make your own videos. You can do your own blog. You can tweet. You can be on Facebook. There are so many avenues so you just have so many opportunities to do it, and so many ways to collaborate and with other people. And the thing I would tell you is don't let people tell you you can't. Don't listen to people who say you're not funny, because it's so subjective. And if you think something's funny, someone else is going to think it's funny too. And the word to the wise that I would offer: don't apologize for yourself. Really, don't say I'm sorry for this. And I'm speaking generally, not just comedy, but if you're a woman, women always lead with I'm sorry. Is it okay if I exist? Fearless, just be fearless. That's what I would want for people, for women. Be
Absolutely
fearless. And also seek out all these other amazing women comedians who are outspoken and owning their own voice. And there's so many different voices out there. It's exciting.
It really is. Well, thank you so much, Mary Jo, for doing this, for talking to me today. This has been an absolute delight.
My pleasure. You are so fun to talk to, Eric.
Well, thank you very much. It's high praise. I'm very excited.
Yeah, no, I really enjoyed it. Thanks, Eric.
Well, thank you. Thank you so much.
You're welcome. Thank you.